Hey everybody, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am excited about this one. Jennifer Osborne out of Clark County, Nevada. 16 years on the line with the Clark County, Nevada Fire Department. The last 10 years as an engineer, which is a chauffeur, operator. Everybody's got different terms for it. Is that a promotional spot? Is that a promoted spot? So you
Yeah,
test for it?
yeah, yeah.
Very
We
cool.
test for it. You're allowed to test when you've been on 3 years. I tested. I want to say it was almost my fourth year, and then they create a list, and then you're promoted off that list. And then I was promoted. I think somewhere around 5.5 years. Because when I originally contacted you, I was at 16 years, and then I just turned my 17th year. So now I'm in my 17th year right now.
Got it. So something interesting to me is you guys operate those big boxy Pierce quantum apparatus out there. You guys are
Yeah,
famous for those, right?
yeah,
Um, they're big. You sit high in those things.
yeah.
How tall are you?
5'5".
I love it. So you're climbing into this thing, right? And it's
Yeah,
like, I mean, you're sitting above the world. Those quantums sit high. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's
And
just some random thoughts here.
no, and that's, I mean, honestly, I mean, that's the only engine and trucks that I have experience driving. So I don't know if the other ones sit lower, but we do. It is. I mean, even for the taller guys, as we get older, we're all like, oh man, like, are they making these steps higher? And
Yeah, right.
there are times where, sometimes it's hydraulic steps, and
Yeah.
so there have been times where the steps don't come down and people don't notice, and they like end up falling out of the engine, and it is so high that like that's not a good thing when that does happen. So
Yeah, I have seen those steps time and time again with guys climbing in and out. You got to open the door and wait for them to deploy and everything else. So anyway, something a
yeah,
little bit unique. You guys are a little bit more unique than, in some regards when it comes to how you operate and the equipment out there. But first and foremost, before we even get to that, thanks for joining me on the show. This is going to be a
oh,
lot
you're
of fun today. So we
welcome.
come to find out, right, before we hit record that you are a New Jersey native. So now this is near and
Yeah,
dear to my heart, right? I'm thinking
yeah,
like, oh, I'm interviewing somebody from Nevada. This is great. It's somebody on the other side of the country, because a lot of times my show tends to be regional because I just know so many people in this area and that's who I'm exposed to all the time. So it's always fun to capture stories from people from other parts of the country. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. A woman firefighter from Nevada? This would be fantastic. Yeah, I'm from Teaneck
yeah.
originally, which is 20 minutes from my house. You know what I mean? So
Oh my
small.
God. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right up Route 4 and Route 208. I mean, so I'm right down the road. And in fact, Jennifer, there's got a lot of guys from my volunteer fire department that are Teaneck firefighters.
oh wow.
I probably know 8 to 10 guys on the job in Teaneck.
Oh wow. That is crazy. Yeah, I went to two different high schools. We moved around a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah,
We lived in New Jersey when I was really young, and in Teaneck in the same house. And then we moved to Illinois for 11 years, and then moved back my
right.
junior year of high school, and then I finished out my junior and senior year of high school at Teaneck. Graduated from Teaneck High School. Then I went to Michigan State for 2 years. I came home because of financial things. My parents were getting divorced, and I didn't have any way of paying for college, and so I came home from Michigan State, and home was New Jersey, Teaneck, and waiting tables. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay
Yeah.
for my bachelor's degree? Because I wanted to, be a veterinarian and all that stuff. Like,
Mm,
fire service wasn't even on my radar.
right.
Um, because I mean, back then, I mean, we're talking. This is 1996, and so I didn't even know that women could be firefighters. That wasn't something that was on my radar. I didn't think about that. I didn't know that women did that. So I was waiting tables, and then one afternoon, the news did like like a special on how types of careers that you can have that you don't need a bachelor's degree for that pay well, and
Right.
paramedic was one of them. And so right then I started researching how to become paramedic. And
Animals, humans, it's all the same,
yeah, it's the same
right?
thing. I was like, well, I can become a paramedic and pay my way through my undergrad and all that. So that was the idea. And so I went to EMT basic school in New Jersey. It was $50 back then,
Yeah.
which is not anymore.
No.
And then, as I was telling you, I worked for Aero Ambulance in Hackensack
Yep.
for
Sure.
9 to 10 months. And then I went back to Michigan and got my paramedic there. And then I started kind of really researching how much veterinary is and the amount of debt that you have, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't kind of
Sure.
working out. So I transferred schools to Colorado. I finished my bachelor's degree there, and I was working as a paramedic. And then that's when one of our one of our annual stations, was in a fire station. They only had one black firefighter, and he would talk to me and be like, "You should be a firefighter." And I was like, "Girl, don't do that." And he just kept at it, and then I started really thinking about it, and I don't want to work in an office. That wasn't
Right.
for me.
Yep.
And so then the fire quest started, and I tested in Vegas. And now, 17 years later, here we are.
No, that's cool. I mean, it's the background always influences where we head, right? And it's the
Right.
experiences we have and the things in front of us is what leads us down the road. Never thinking that you would be an EMT or a paramedic, and here you are today as a career firefighter. And so I have to ask you though, your first walk down that EMT paramedic life, that lane that you entered, was it what you were expecting? I mean, you had no previous knowledge of this profession at all, correct?
No, I didn't. I mean, I was friends with a couple of police officers, but it was kind of casual. It wasn't like anything. And I mean, like I said, I never thought about it. Um, but it was one of those things that it fit my personality. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very A-type. I'm very I would have never made a really good nurse, because like the long term stuff, I'm not really that good at. I'm good at making like quick decisions and under pressure and that kind of thing. And so, and then, yeah, all of the, you know, I guess like blood and gore and all that stuff, that was just
Right.
never something that ever bothered me. The only thing that stood out when I became a paramedic that I wasn't expecting was um, I don't know how to say it. Like the people who fall all the time. I never knew that. Like I never thought like
People
because
taking
I mean,
advantage of the system? Are you kidding? That
yeah,
happens? Right.
I never knew that because we never called 911 ever. And then to just have that door open to where you're meeting people who not only call 911, but like probably call every day. Like
Yes.
that was an eye opener for me. And no matter where I was in EMS, whether it was Michigan, Colorado, now outside Las Vegas or Las Vegas,
All the
it's
same.
all the same. It is all the same. I mean, even in Hackensack, it's all the same. And so that would be like, and I think firefighting is there's always commonalities that run through all of those things. Like no matter where you are, there's differences, little differences. Like you were saying, yeah, we drive the Pierce and we're sitting house and all that stuff, and we have lightweight construction out here. And
Sure.
so there's little differences, but I think culturally we're pretty.
Did you have a handle on people before you got into this? Because this, if you think about it, right, we don't ever talk about this side of it, right? And especially with your indoctrination to EMS first before pursuing a fire career. It really is social worker, counselor, having a tremendous amount of empathy and working with all different types of people that a lot of them suffer. And we all know the system is plagued with mental health, and a lot of it is, substance addiction, overdose, and mental health. And that
Yeah,
plagues our systems, right? So it takes very unique people to be able to navigate that system without it being detrimental to themselves or imploding themselves.
yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, well, I mean, I've always been an extrovert. Like people can never get me
Yeah.
to be quiet.
Well, you
So
said you couldn't. You said you couldn't sit in an office, and I agree. I can't do that either.
no, and so and I'm very chatty. And I started working when I was 13. I started working at Burger King when I was 13. And then I waited tables. I've worked a lot of different jobs. I worked in a
Yeah,
movie theater. I worked at Medieval Times in Lyndhurst. So, I've worked a
been there.
whole lot. Yeah, I've worked a whole lot of jobs that make you have to interact with people. And so by the time I got to being a paramedic or being an EMS, and you have to establish, rapport really quick and be able to talk to people, I was already able to do that. I just needed to learn like
So
what
important.
I needed to talk to people about. Like, okay, like, find a structure of how to talk to people, how to like, okay, find out what's wrong quickly and what we need to do to make it better. And so,
I Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like, so it wasn't a super hard transition for me because I'm really extroverted, and so it was never a barrier for me to go up to strangers and talk to them. The one barrier that it was when I became a medic, I was 22. And so I'm having these like
Mm,
adult conversations with these 40-year-old people, and I'm like trying to like be like, yeah, they're maybe suicidal or something. And I'm trying to talk
yeah.
to them about life. And I'm like, what do I mean, I'm 22 and they're like in their 40s or 50s. And here I am, like, trying to be relatable. But I mean, and those are the times where I would have to lean on the other people I'm seeing because coming from me, like, I look like a child, and it's like, they're not gonna receive it as well. But it's up to me to like realize that situation. Like me telling somebody who's 20, 30 years older than me that, oh, everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, life will work out fine for you. Don't you worry,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. No, I get it. Well, it's like those life coaches at 23 years old.
yeah,
I always crack up when I hear that. What do you do? I'm a life coach. How old are you? 25. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Be a life coach for 16-year-olds because you're
That's
not going to.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to say something too. What I love what you got to before, where you said that you waited tables and you worked in different service industries.
yeah,
I absolutely believe that every kid should have to have some type of job that is low paying and they get their ass handed to them on a daily occurrence.
yeah.
People
And
aren't polite. When you talk about waiters and service cashiers, businesses or industry that require you to work with people and people don't have much gratitude for the service that you provide. And that is why for me it's like I firmly believe that like every kid would have a different appreciation of life if they had to be on the other end of the conversation or the other end of the interaction with somebody because of their job or their requirement to be there. I think that that would really set a stage and foundation for a lot of people to have a new appreciation for the hard work that people do across this country.
yeah, and that's kind of going away a little bit, right? Because
Yes.
I had to earn a living. Like I moved out of my house when I graduated high school. So
Yeah.
I had to earn a living. So even if like let's say, younger people today go and work that job, it's not as important. You know what I mean? They're not gonna maybe eat that shit as much because they live at home. They like what's gonna happen? Like nothing's gonna happen if they lose that job. And of course I'm generalizing for everybody, but there is that they have that little bit of safety net that I didn't have. So it was like, okay, I was working in three different restaurants. I was waiting tables. Like I was
Just
doing
to
that
make ends meet.
just to, and it
Yeah.
wasn't always meeting. Like there were times where like, yeah, I didn't have money and the food that I was eating was the food that I would buy at the restaurant. Like thank God I worked at a restaurant because that was how I was able to, afford to eat, like I was like,
There's a lot
okay,
there's so much to be said for this though.
yeah,
When you put everything on the line and you have to create whatever you need, you're responsible for.
yeah,
That is where, that's why I chuckle when, you hear and I talk to guys like in the firehouse and, in their late 20s and they still live home. And
yeah,
and they talk about how unfair it is or how things aren't easy for them. And I just
yeah,
listen, and don't get me wrong, because I don't want to come off from a place that like I, was out of my house at 12 and worked. My parents were very generous for me. I talk about my college. They paid for my college. I mean, I
yeah,
got a bachelor's degree on their dime. So I
right,
am fortunate, but I recognize that more today than I ever have when I was in that position. And so even with my kids, I think I spoil them rotten, and I should be probably holding them a little more accountable than I do, but I do certainly hold them accountable. And as they're getting older, I'm holding them more and more accountable,
Yeah.
which I don't think they're enjoying, but it's good for them because it's giving them the foundation they need. And this has a lot to do with how we got together today. You
Yeah.
said that something you saw on social media that I put out, probably from my Bridging the Gap class, where I
Yeah.
talk about the different generational values and how we bring that all together to benefit the fire service. I mean, that's ultimately what that program's all about, is connecting the old and young and finding new ground and finding common ground to move forward. And that's when you reached out and said, hey, you and I can relate on a lot of topics here.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly, agreed with that because just as you're saying with your kids, our generation and the generations before are influencing this upcoming generation. So we can't be so critical because it's like, I can't remember if you said it or not, but it's like when this generation's coming up behind us, it's almost like we're looking in a mirror, right? Like we're looking at that's what we've produced. And so if we're mad at how they're turning out, well, who raised them? Who was us? Yeah,
It's so hard to look in a mirror, isn't it?
yeah, and I get it. It's hard. I mean, I don't have kids, but I remember how I was raised, and it was like, hey, like, like you're expected to go out and earn your own way. Like there was no, I don't ever remember my parents like thinking that I was gonna live there after I graduated high school. Like
Right.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and so I get it. Times are changing because you want your kids to have a little bit more opportunity to do things that they like to do and then thrive. But it's I guess it's just like kind of finding that balance. And let me just go back to say that waiting tables was probably the most stressful job I ever had, and that includes firefighting.
I
I
believe that.
still have nightmares about waiting tables. I haven't done it in 20 years. I still have, and I
Right.
very rarely have nightmares about firefighting or being a paramedic or anything like that. But like, I will for sure have a nightmare about I didn't get bred to, table 35. I
And
will have that nightmare. So
and how much of an appreciation do you have now when you go out to dinner? How well do you treat waiters and waitresses?
I overtip no matter what. Like
I
even if they
Yeah.
screw up, I'm like, oh, well, maybe they're fighting with the cook, and like, like I overtip, I overdo it, and that's gonna be for my entire life. But it does make me appreciate the job I have now because I never want to go back to that. You know,
You know, we
um,
we we always want to do more for the next generation. Like, you don't want your children to have the same struggles that you had. You think that giving them more opportunity is good for them. I agree, opportunity's good. But man, do we got to look at framework, right? We got to look at
yeah,
that foundation. And I
yeah,
think what's happening is as we provide more opportunity and maybe create a kinder, gentler world, we're taking more diversity out of it in a way.
yeah.
Struggle, right? Trying to find your way and figure things out, the grittiness of what hard work and determination looks like.
Yeah,
I
and then decision making, like kind
Yeah,
of like you kind of like touch on it, like a little bit of like how are they going to make their own decisions when there's maybe not that safety net, and that's what you see. That's what we're seeing now, in the
mm,
fire service is we're in the hiring process right now in my fire department, and um, like when I went to test, there was I mean I'm about to date myself. There was no internet. The internet wasn't what it is now. Like you couldn't just type something in
100%.
and everything would pop up. Like you had to like make phone calls. You had to track stuff down when you applied. Like you had to keep making phone calls to that department. Like you had to make sure that all your stuff was updated, and no one was guiding you along. Like you just were like, okay, I really want this, so I'm gonna call every fire department within a 500-mile, 1,000-mile
I love
radius,
this. Yes,
and
you're
I'm gonna
right.
do this. Now that is not the case. Like people are like, our training chief was like, I sent these people an email about the hiring process, and all we got was questions back. It's like they didn't even read the email. And I'm like, okay, they didn't. And then it's all questions about, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I? And so, um, we are now in the process of, okay, well, how do we then train these people to be able to make their own decisions,
Mm.
but then also not miss out on people who could be good just because we're like, well, I didn't have that when I was, you know, trying to apply. So we don't want these people because they don't understand. Like that's that generational gap that you were talking
There's
about.
so
How
much.
do we
There's
change?
so much here. Oh my God. You just opened up the biggest door, right? Like,
Yeah,
and there's so much here because first off, details matter.
yeah,
Like if you get today, we prompt people and feed them the info. We
yeah,
literally give the answers to the test,
yeah,
the riddle. We get there's no riddles anymore because we just tell you what the answer is.
yeah,
Here's an email about our hiring practice. Thank you for your interest in, US Town USA for
yeah,
your application for the fire service. Here is what we require in the next 10 days.
yeah,
How many freaking people will read it, follow through with it, and get
yeah,
it done correctly? And here's the problem: attention to detail matters. And when we can't even have people follow simple direction that we're giving the answers for, they don't
right,
even have to go seek it, but we require some work out of them. If
right,
they can't do that part of the process in the very beginning,
yeah,
and we continue to hold their hand to get through the process,
yeah.
we're screwed.
Then what happens when we're on a fire and there's nobody else around and they're like,
That's right.
oh man, like which hose line should I get? Oh, the captain just went off to go do something else. What do I do? There's no one around to ask, so I'll just be frozen. And that does happen. And so for me, that was what drew me to your bridging the gap
Yeah.
was you
Yeah.
didn't just bring up the issue, you brought up the issue and then was like, okay, and here's the solution. Because I don't like to point out, okay, well they're doing this, and then it's like, well, okay, well we can be mad all we want, but
Right.
we're gonna have to leave the fire service to somebody. I mean, we're not. I mean,
It's not going
and
away.
no, I mean, and I'm not getting any younger. We're not going to be able to do it for indefinitely. It's a young man's game, no matter which way you cut it. That is hands down. It is especially like when you're first coming on, and for us, it's firefighters and rank, and then engineers. You move up, but like when you're the firefighter rank, it's rough on your body out here. We are a very busy fire department, and we're busy in fire and EMS. And it will beat you down. And so we need these younger people coming up, and we have to find a way. And so what I've been doing out here, and my fire department's been doing out here, is so there's an Explorer program that we have, and it's from 16 to 21. But my whole thing was, by the time I got interested in firefighting, I was 24 or 25,
Right.
and I had missed that Explorer window.
Hmm.
So by the time I got into the fire service, I had zero exposure to fire. I didn't even know there were different hoses. Like I did on day one of fire academy, I didn't know that.
How
They were
would you know?
like,
Right.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
like I see the trucks driving by, I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. Like you guys have, but like on day one, they're like, go get me an 1 3/4 fog nozzle. And I'm like, wow, that was a lot of words that I don't understand. Like
Right.
I know what fog is. I know what a nozzle is. I know it. Like, am I supposed to get a ruler out and measure? Like, how do I know which one that is? And this day two. And I was like, geez, like, did I miss? Did I miss a day where they taught all this? And the thing is, a lot of the other guys, actually every other guy in my fire time, either had firefighter one, or they were explorers, or they had some kind of construction background, or they knew somebody that was in the fire. So
Sure.
they weren't going in totally, blind. And my only interaction with the fire service was when I was in, EMS and seeing them on EMS. I didn't see them on fire. I didn't know what went on fire. I was willing to learn, but it's like how you learn that. So what we did is, I'll circle back. So what we did is, um, in the last year and a half, we've started a program called Beyond Explorers, which means it's for people who have aged out of explorers, have no fire experience, and want to get fire experience and exposure to the fire service. And in that, we're trying to, one of the things that all the cadre that keeps the rookie schools, they've reached out and they're like, hey, like the number one thing that we're seeing, it's not really like physical deficiency. It's not like all that stuff is great, like teach them that. But can you teach them how to be mentally tough, how to not um, quit when it gets hard, how to make decisions, how to listen, pay attention to detail because they're not getting that same exposure growing up. It's something that can be taught, but us in our generation, we have to we can't be so judgmental. I mean, there are those few people who, yeah, okay, they are lazy, but the majority of the people just don't know. And so it's up to us to find a way to teach them how to do that. And so that's what I try to do in our program. Like if I keep getting the same questions over and over again, I'm like, okay, you need to go and look for that answer yourself. Read that
So
email. What is it?
so this is your you work on this program?
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I had a conversation the other day with a chief, other side of the country from you, on my side of the country here, and we were chatting about this, and he said one thing that they're seeing is that the non-legacy firefighters, meaning kids that weren't volunteers,
Right.
didn't grow up in a firefighting home, and had no knowledge of the fire service, the fire departments and the academies are taking a lot of assumptions that people already know information prior to them coming in.
Yes.
And the problem is that kids that did not grow up surrounded by the fire service are literally starting at ground zero. They have no knowledge. They don't even know how the hose line works, let alone what size it is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a fantastic idea to provide that information, because then what you do is anybody that's interested in taking that program, you can tailor that program exactly around your fire academy and your fire department so that they don't come in with generalized information. They're going to come in with specific information about how you operate, what is expected of them. And then it's not even just knowledge of the fire service, but it's also that mental aspect. It's also that that informal senior man stuff that you're expected to take the garbage out. And these are expectations that come along with early years in the fire service. We expect you to be on time, or to be early. We expect you to do this. We expect this. These are things that are part of the code, if you will.
I agree.
I freaking love this. So it's called Beyond Explorer. So it's after people have the opportunity to take your Explorer program.
Right.
Now they move on to the Beyond Explorer program, which is the next step before getting into the academy.
It's basically like, hey, did you decide to become a firefighter after the age of 21? Okay, we have this, I almost said service. We have this program that you can come. We meet once a month, and it's 1 month we do just strict fitness, and then the other month we expose you to fire service and firefighting. It also opens you up to you're meeting our crews because we get our crews, our fire crews involved. And we do like really basic stuff because they don't know anything about firefighting.
Yeah.
So we can't be like, hey, here's how you throw a 24. They're not going to know that. They don't even know which one is a 24. And so it is like real rudimentary. We pull all the gear out and we're like, look, this is our 24-foot extension ladder. This is our 16-foot roof ladder. This is our 14-foot roof ladder. Pick it up, feel how it, it's really, really, really basic. And then they get the opportunity, because they're meeting these crews, they get the opportunity to do ride-alongs. They get the opportunity to meet with the crews and do mock interviews and hear about like what it is for life in the fire service because they just don't know. And the thing is, they'll weed themselves out. Like if they don't like having to say sir, ma'am, if they don't like having to be the low man on the totem pole, if they don't like, because they're like beneath even the rookies, because you would think that people who are on the fire department now wouldn't be, there's like this, I want to definitely get back to what I'm about to say. So there's this stigma attached that people in the fire service don't want diversity. They don't want these new people. They're pissed off at them and they don't want to be involved. And since we started this program, it is the complete opposite. The people who are on the fire department, I have captains reaching out to me going, hey, we want to be involved. Come to our station when you guys do a meetup. It was like when we first started, I was like, oh, I don't want to wear this station out. We're using them too much. Now this year, that we're starting into our second year, I've got so many stations that are reaching out and so many captains that are reaching out. It's like we'll only get around to those stations once in a calendar year.
But that makes sense, and here's why. You're putting forward the expectations of what you want out of these people before they join your organization, so that when they do join, they already know what the expectations are, and they're going to potentially live up to them, and which is then going to give you a better candidate, which will give you a better firefighter at the end of the day. And so I'm sure that these captains want to get on board because they see the value in it, because they see the difference between somebody that didn't get told what the expectations were versus somebody that did. And I can tell you this, people that want to stay, how many people go through the academy and drop out in the first few weeks and are like, this isn't for me?
Yep.
We can circumvent that whole issue by giving them this upfront program, and then they can determine if it's really for them to take that leap and jump into a fire academy.
Right, and keep going. And
yes,
so I can't emphasize it enough that how inspiring it is that you see all these people who are on, who, the media, society, whatever, the people that fit into whatever that demographic is, they're always seen as being closed-minded and not wanting to, work with the new generation or work with people who are different from them. And I'm telling you, that couldn't be further from the truth.
I would agree with you.
And I think the fire department is making a lot of positive changes, and I've seen a lot of positive changes that, just happened organically in the last 10 to 15 years. And so when you look at that and you say, okay, we have people on this side who don't know anything about the fire service, they're willing to learn, they're willing to come in, but they might not have had any avenue. And then we have people on the fire department that are willing to put their time in and train these people. And so it's like, all right, well, why weren't we doing this before? This is a good way to then get a good finished product, because that's ultimately our goal. Our goal is to produce somebody who's going to be a valued asset on our fire department. That's all I want. I want somebody who is going to be able to accept the training, because if you get into rookie school and you don't know anything about the fire service, and they're just teaching in general, when you're trying to learn something and then you add stress into it, and somebody's teaching you and using all these words that you don't understand, you'll be lucky if you can absorb 30% of it. But if you've already heard some of the terms, you've seen some of the things, you kind of know what to be expected, so you kind of know, then you can absorb more of it as they're teaching you it in rookie school. And then they'll make you a better firefighter when you hit the floor. And then when you hit the floor, then you'll be able to absorb even more information as you go through your rookie year and then your first 3 to 5 years. You'll be able to absorb more of it because you kind of learned that foundation, that structure that you were talking about with your kids. Like, you've learned that foundation under kind of like a low stress kind of thing where you could actually learn it. Not where you're so paranoid you're going to get fired that you're not even listening to what they're saying. And you can't listen.
All of it, yes. I mean, I wrote down while you were talking, complainers are the lazy ones.
yeah. I've really heard you say that, yeah.
The people that complain the most about this new generation is not putting the time in to work with them and to figure it out.
Yeah.
They're not willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
I came back. I've been at 2 conferences in the last 2 weeks. I've been traveling like crazy. This past weekend, I just got home from Alabama yesterday. There were 75 students there for the weekend. Not even students, firefighters. Firefighters there wanting more, going after more.
Yeah.
There were some older guys in that group, but primarily I would say they were all in their young 30s and under.
Okay, wow.
There were a bunch of females in it, mostly male, bunch of females. They were all different shapes and sizes and colors and looks and feels and all of it.
Yeah.
It was a very diverse group that was there. And they were all there sharing one thing in common.
Right.
They wanted to better their position in the fire service by testing themselves at a kick-ass weekend with unbelievable hands-on fire training.
Yeah.
That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
Now, these kids come from these generations that we're talking about, right? The ones that people complain about.
Yeah.
These kids are there, and they are plugged in. So you can't tell me it's a generational thing.
Right.
So start focusing on your people and find ways like this Beyond Explorer program where you can touch people.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that's what it's about. Like
Yeah.
I take the nonsense and excuses out of the system.
Yep.
And you got nothing more than how much worth are you giving them?
Yeah.
You know, we want Jennifer, we expect everything from our firefighters. The day you join this fire department, you give your life to us.
Yeah.
You put your life on a line. You could die in this job, right? We
Yeah.
all go through this same speech, right?
Yeah.
And it is 100% true. But what are we doing for them?
And that's why I contacted you, is because like you're saying, hey, I'm willing to. You're saying yourself, you're willing to go out and teach these classes and train them and teach them how to start a chainsaw because they've probably never done it.
That's right.
You're willing to do all of that stuff, and it's like, hey, like we're every city in. Okay, I won't overgeneralize, but most of the cities in America are growing at an exponential rate, right? So we need more people. So we're going to have to pull from different pools. So yeah, we are going to have to pull from pools where people didn't grow up in the fire service and all that. But they're, like you said, they're willing to be trained. And we have people that are willing to train them. We just have to kind of get over that hump of, well, we never had to do this before. And then once we do that, I think it'll be a really, really positive thing. And that's what really inspires me to, like keep going and be like, wow, like, I have 3 years left probably before I retire. And wow, I feel like I'm leaving the fire department better than it was when I started. I really wholeheartedly agree. And I think sometimes when you say negative stuff, it gets picked up more. Uh, People, like whether it's on social media or the
Of course.
media, the negative stuff gets picked up more. So a lot of times when people talk to me, about being a woman or, being a black person or both of them together or whatever, or even being a paramedic. Because when you come into the fire service as a paramedic, like, it's like, that's like the worst one out of the three.
She's black, she's a female, and she's a paramedic.
That's the last one. Oh, like they're like, oh, well, the other two we would take, but that last thing, like
that's
they're like,
hilarious.
oh, like that's the worst one is the medic thing. And so it's like, like I've seen such positive change. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, what did they say to you, and what did they do, and what bad things do you? And I'll get that sometimes from women who are kind of thinking about it, and minorities and other things, other types of people, and they're like, I don't know, like I hear all these things, and I'm like, look, I always level with them. I'm like, look, no matter what career path you go into, there's going to be adversity and there's going to be
100%. 100%.
There's no career path where you're going to go and it's going to be smooth. So let's say like you're like, well, I'm a woman and I don't want to, I don't want all that adversity. Okay, let's say you go into a female-dominated profession. Like, let's say you're a beautician. You're telling me there's no conflict in a hair salon? Like, you're going to have conflict there. And so I always tell, all these people who are coming in or people who ask me, try not to focus on the negative. Focus on the positive things. It's like, I always say, oh, my fire academy wasn't even taught in English. Like, it was taught in bro. And I didn't speak that.
I don't speak bro.
Yeah, I was like, maybe you were teaching in English. But I was lucky enough that there were other recruits in my fire academy who were able to translate stuff for me, and they were willing to do that. And so that's the thing that I want to focus on is like, okay, yeah, there might be a couple, like you were saying, complainers or people who just always have problems, but there's also plenty of people out there who are willing to help. And while, yeah, okay, I did have adversity, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, part of it I brought on myself. I got a big mouth. I don't know how to shut up. I mean, and so that's part of it. And I will own that every single day. Like that's part of it. Like I'm not,
Sure.
like going like, why are they doing this? No, I know why. That's part of it. But then part of it is, yeah, there's always gonna be people that have problems. Not everybody's gonna like you, right? But at the same time, I also had super, super strong, powerful mentors who I'd probably say half of them are retired now, and I still have, occasional like casual text messages or whatever. And I'll probably have that for the rest of our lives.
I love it.
Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Mm.
And
So
so
go
let
ahead.
me just say that again. Like,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for certain guys, and it all falls into that demographic that's being demonized in media, in social media nowadays. It's that straight white male that's supposed to hate everything that I am. Those were the people that were instrumental in raising me up and making me the person and the firefighter that I am today. And those
Well,
were there for me. And it was, I mean, it wasn't just them, but it wasn't only other minorities or other women helping me. At the end of the day, I had to take help and accept help from people who didn't look like me. I had to be willing to accept it. And so that door swings both ways. Just as like with the millennials and the Gen Zs and us, the Gen X, how that door has to swing both ways, how they have to be willing to want to learn and how we have to be willing to want to teach. It's the same thing with a woman or a minority or whatever. Like, you can't just be looking for help from people or acceptance from people who look like you, because the way of the world, I mean, we're never ever going. I don't want to say never, but it will be very difficult to get to 50% women or whatever, because most women wouldn't choose this career path, which is fine. But for the women that do, we need to realize that it's probably always going to be male dominated. So we need to get to the point where we feel comfortable working with them. And guess what? The majority of those men, at the end of the day, they just want a good team member. They just want a good crew. They're
so
not out to get you. They're
so
not.
this is
They're
what I
just not.
wanted to say.
Go
This is
ahead.
what no, I appreciate you really going off there and talking about that, because I think it's so important, because ultimately that last 2-3 minutes of you going after that absolutely backs up what the first 40 minutes of this podcast was all about, was your hard work and determination in life. Like, not allowing other things to get in the way, and other than who you are and the foundation from which you come.
Yes.
You have a strong work ethic. You worked in different jobs leading up to it. You understood you're a talker, you're a doer. And for you to say that, it just makes sense, because that's all we want in the fire. We want people in the fire service. I don't care who you are, what you look like, where you come from. We need people that can do this job.
Right.
And I know single-handedly, I'm sure you had some challenges along the way. I can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But I know this too, and speaking with you today, and I could double down on what I'm about to say, is that it's your hard work, your morals, ethics, and values that brought you through to why you're where you are today, and why you have text messages in your phone from those guys that helped you along the way or were mentors for you.
Yeah.
That matters, because you were there for the right reasons. You put your work ethic ahead of anything else to prove to yourself and to others that, damn, I'm here because I can do this job.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of times, with I mean, no matter what, it's human nature to see someone, right, and then you're gonna make an assumption, and so
Right.
then it's on me, and a lot of people get offended by it. They're like, man, well, I want it, and it's like, well, now it's on you to show them who you are. Okay, they made an assumption. So now it's your chance to either prove them right or prove them wrong. So which one are you gonna do? And that's why, like, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for people who, I mean, on every fire department, there's, those alpha people who everyone looks up to and all that stuff. And the majority of people take their cues from those people, right? Like, there's always the strongest person on the crew, and the strongest person in the room, the strongest person, on, whatever shift you work or whatever. People who are held up and put on a pedestal, and, because with good reason. And so it's up to, the person who's coming on, who's new, to, I don't know if it's your job to really identify those people and then seek them out. I mean, you can do that, but I want to say that usually, like, I mean, I guess my experience was they sought me out. They met me, they gave me a chance. They didn't, like, make any like overt judgments immediately. And then they were like, okay, all right, she's working hard. There's things, yeah, that she struggles with, but there's things that here that we can work with. And
Yeah.
they were willing to work with those things. They were willing to be like, okay, you know, I think they realized that everybody is going to have different strengths and weaknesses, right? And that's why we're a team when we go on a fire. Like you'll see the stereotypical, like what people think is a firefighter. It's this big, like strong, like muscly guy or whatever. But how many, yeah, but how many times have you seen a guy who isn't like that outperform a guy who is? You know,
100%.
and you
100%.
see that all the time. And so it's like there's people who realize that, and then there's people who don't. And so we used to have a guy, he's retired too. He taught a whole bunch of rookie schools, and he always used to say, "Oh boy, that guy's got a lot of muscles, but it takes a lot of oxygen to run those muscles." So it's just because you're muscular doesn't mean, oh, you're going to be this
Yeah.
outstanding
Yeah.
firefighter. It doesn't mean that you're not, but it's not. You look at that person and you say, okay, they're probably going to be good. But I mean, I know every firefighter watching is going to think, oh yeah, I've seen some big jack dude just put the stuff on and just drop. Like especially out here when it's 115 degrees.
Uh-huh.
You put your pronouns on, okay, now it's an equalizer. I don't care how strong you are. If you're not heat acclimated and you don't have cardio, I don't care how strong. It's useless when you're out of breath and on your knees.
I do want to say this too, though, right? Another big part of this that nobody really talks about, the physical fitness, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, and the mental determination matters too.
right.
There's one other thing that we don't talk about: heart.
Yeah,
You know, listen, I watched over the weekend at some of this training. Guys have all this training, been to all these programs, and they're in the best physical shape of their life, but they left a guy
yeah,
they left a guy because they didn't leave themselves in a position to really suck wind, to
yeah,
be there until somebody else got there. Like, and heart has so much to do with it because it's that informalness. You can't really explain it, and you can't really, but they're there to do the right thing, always to do the right thing all the time.
yeah.
And if a brother or sister is down, I'm not abandoning them.
Right,
I'm not leaving them. I
right.
will stay. That is hard.
Yeah, and,
Hard, hard to teach.
yeah, and we all know. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been on fire where an actual fire where we had one of our guys just be like, "Oh, it's hot in here. I'm gonna go outside," and left the rest of us. So, so that has definitely happened. And I really do think that like you can't underestimate that. Like I wasn't. I will tell you right now, and anybody who was in my rookie school, taught my rookie school, whatever, will tell you I was never the best at everything, like technically. Like I was never like really like technically exceptional at forceful entry, whatever, let's just say.
Right.
Or
I get it.
technically exceptional. I can, yeah, I can throw the 24 by myself. Does it look as good as these tall 6 foot dudes? No, it looks dumb. It look, those memes where they're like, "Here's how I think I look," and you look great, and then they're like, "Yeah, here's how I really look," and it looks like you're like tripping and falling and whatever. Like that's kind of like the reality of the situation, and I would probably say most people kind of fall into that category anyway. But the reason I'm sitting here today is because I never, as hard as a guy, and our rookie school is pretty tough. I never passed out. I never quit. And there was like one of our skill courses that goes on for over an hour. So like you're breathing air, you go off air, and this was a long time ago. So the second you went off air, your mask would fog up, and it was really uncomfortable, and you barely couldn't breathe because we didn't have a stop where you take off the regulator and then you have like an open hole. Like it was like you're breathing through a straw. So it's even worse.
Right. Yep. Yep.
And we had this one skills course, and you had to do it by yourself. And um, I remember like being towards the end of it, and I was just exhausted. And one of the cadres was like, "Hey, like we should probably stop her before she hurts herself." And then the other guy was like, no, like if we let her quit now, that will like just that will destroy everything that's good about her. And so, obviously I completed it. It took me a long time, and there were people in the rookie school that quit on it. I mean, there were people that quit on it. So, but I might not ever, and so I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I'm never going to be absolutely the fastest best, at doing all of those things. But honestly, like I was right in the middle. I mean, I was right in the middle. So I'm not the fastest, but I will complete it. I can do all the skills, and yeah, I'm not the fastest, but I definitely wasn't the slowest either.
I was saying it before, right? It's hard to teach heart. We could teach skills.
Yeah,
I could teach you how to force a door better. I could teach you how to throw a 24 better.
yeah,
You could go to the gym and do cardio every single day and lift weights all the time.
yeah,
You could do all those things because the fire service is built on skills,
yeah,
right? I get it. But then that other part of it, determination, heart,
yeah,
it's very hard to teach that. And
yeah,
people either typically have that or they don't.
yeah,
And a lot of times that is what sets you apart from when your skills might not be as good as the next guy,
yeah.
but you have something a little bit more from him in the tank that will make you more resourceful to make sure that you're in position or able to get that door forced
Right.
in a timely manner because you're resourceful enough to know how to get it done, even if it's not as clean or crisp as the guy before you.
And that's why I'm sitting here. That's 100%
Right.
why I'm sitting here.
100%.
Yeah, I mean that's is because I mean they were like I mean I'm sure they were thinking a lot of the time like they were like damn we just this bitch just won't go away like she just keeps going like, just like what is that like like and it just and I mean and that to me is that's the equalizer right like it's like okay yeah I might
That's
not be
it.
the biggest person but
I'd
once we
take you in
put
my company all day long.
yeah. And so it's like once we put turnouts on, we're almost kind of on the same footing right now, especially when it's hot. Because like, I mean, like I was joke, I used to joke with one of my crews, like I was like, yeah, it's my superpower. I can't get hot. Like even right now, I'm sitting in my house and my hands are cold. Like my fingers will be numb. Like I
Oh,
can get fully turned out and my fingertips will be like numb. And I'll look over and the guys are like sweating, and we haven't even done anything.
sure.
I'm like, yeah, that's my superpower. My heart rate isn't up just by, being hot. So it's like, okay, now you might have lost, like, like when you put turnouts on and it gets hot, let's say you lose like 30% of whatever your, effective strength or cardio or whatever. How about if I didn't lose that? Let's say I only lose it because I don't get overheated. So now we're like, let's say you were 30% stronger than me. Now we're almost equal, right? Like we're almost equal because I
I
didn't
get
drop
it.
down. So now we're almost equal. So now we're partners, right? Like now we're in it together. And I made it, and this is something I think every person who works on the fire service has to make that decision. I made it a decision. I never wanted people waiting for me. I never wanted people going, oh, man, we got to drag this person along. Like, I never wanted I never wanted that. I wanted to be good at this job and be good at doing all of this. And you're right. Like not everybody joins and wants to do that. So people do have a good point when they're like, oh, well, whatever, this person isn't working hard. But I mean, you got to make room for the people that do want to do
Resiliency. We'll push and push and push. What's
it.
your
Yeah,
breaking point?
yeah,
And, I've seen the strongest guys in the room mentally not tough.
right. And strength isn't everything, right? Like
Right.
strength isn't everything. And so I also I developed a lecture like coincidentally I called it bridging the gap too as well. But I was
Hey,
yeah,
I love
it
it.
was funny. But it was all about like why we need diversity and why we need to bring it in. And so my the cornerstone of that lecture was when you look at a football team, everyone on a football team doesn't look the same. They don't. It's a very diverse group of people. They all have the same common goal, and they're all football players, right? Like they all need to be able to tackle, catch, throw, do all that stuff. But that might not be their specific job. But as a football player, they can do all of those things. It's coming up and like little when the youth football they all have to, like, they haven't decided like what position they're going to play. And then as you get older,
Right.
you specialize, right? To me, the fire department is very similar, right? Like we're going to have certain guys who are better at, ladders. There's certain guys that are better at force entry, or certain guys that are better at or this or that. Everyone has to be proficient at all the skills, but we're always going to have people that excel in different areas, right? And so I always use the example that Adam Vinatieri, who was the kicker for the Patriots, um, excellent. I mean, like huge plus, right? Like
Yes.
he also tackled Michael Walker on a kickoff return once. Is that his job to tackle Herschel Walker? No, that is not like why he is on the field. He's capable of doing it. Yeah. Is he going to be the one that you're going to go to for tackling? No, he's the one you go to for kicking. But also, like, you're not going to pull the lineman off and be like, yeah, I need you to hit this 57-yarder in the snow. Like, you're
Right.
not going to call on that guy for that. But like,
Correct.
you're all a team, and you're all going to work together for that common goal. And to me, firefighting is the same way. We're not all going to look the same because the job is so diverse. We can't all look and be the same. And that has nothing to do with race and gender. That has everything to do with what is that person bringing to the table, because that is true diversity, right? Like, true diversity is what skills and assets is this person bringing that we can use that we don't already have. And that to me is true diversity. And so if we want to do that, we just have to open up our pool. And to me, when you start over recruiting for a certain type of person, like when you start over recruiting, you're like, oh, we just don't have enough black people, so let's just go hire a bunch of black people. It's like, I get where you're going with that. Yeah, we do need to be more diverse culturally. I get it, and here's why: is because when they're bringing new ideas and new capabilities that we might not already have. But when you specifically target a specific group, that is just as bad as leaving us. So what you need to do is open up that pool and make it more accessible to everybody. Don't make firefighting such a big secret. Make it accessible to everybody that's out there. So then you will catch people with that wide net. And that's what, and now I'm bringing back, that's what Beyond Explorers is for. Hey, we're going to open this wide net to people who otherwise didn't know about the fire. They didn't know about it, which is, women, minorities, other people who know, who just didn't know anything about firefighting. They saw Chicago Fire and they think it's going to be cool. So now we open up this training program to people who would probably get washed out, not because they don't know, or not because they didn't want to, but because they just didn't know, and they were kind of a couple steps behind everybody else who had advanced knowledge. And so I guess that's my big soapbox is, if you want to become more diverse, you just have to open your net up. And then it will happen organically, no matter what you do. Just open that net up and let it happen organically. Because when you kind of, my bachelor's degree is kind of in breeding and stuff, and they say when you over select for one trait,
You said in breeding, not inbreeding, right?
in when you're breeding animals. Yeah. Well, and that's what happens is, like, when you over select for one,
That's
why
right.
inbreeding is bad.
Yeah.
You get hip dysplasia in German Shepherds because you're over selecting for a certain trait. And so it's the same thing if you're like over selecting for like a certain type of person.
I get it.
You're missing out on the whole concept of a diversity. And the whole concept of diversity is, hey, we're bringing people from all different walks of life. Okay, yeah, that'll include gender. That'll include race. That'll include, whatever sex or whatever thing you want to put in there. If you cast a wide net, you're going to catch it.
So I wrote down while you were talking, and I love it, right? Because I love making notes, and I love coming up with, like hearing what guests say on my show, and then I'm like, I kind of package it. Mm-hmm. And I wrote optics versus reality.
Yes.
Unfortunately, optics get in the way of your reality approach, right? Your realistic approach. Because ultimately, when you talk about the football team, when you get to that level, everybody's there because they're the best for that position.
Right.
They're the best for the team. And they're not put there just because.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I value is this. The fire service is made up of all different types. and the people on the apparatus don't care. Now, again, goes back to your comment before, every career, any type of job will always have the negative, the naysayers, the listen, it could be anything, right? But people will just have a negative connotation about whatever. But if people are all there to do the right thing, to do the job, and they carry and conduct themselves in a manner that is representative of other people's work efforts around you and the mission of the company or the fire department, then nobody gives a crap who you are.
Yeah.
You look at diversity in the fire service, and when I do my program with the Bridging the Gap and I talk about the different generations, the last slide after I go through from the World War II veterans, the greatest generation, right up through Gen Alpha, and I go through each generation, at the end I said it doesn't matter because we're all generation firefighter.
Right.
We all need to subscribe to that. So we don't care where you come from. I don't care what you look like. Can you do the job?
Right.
And that is the job that is expected of you.
Right.
We can't cut corners. We can't allow for the work or all the work leading up to where you are not to be done. You have to be in the trenches to do the work, to prove that you could do the work. And when you do, you're accepted.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think, is what is going to, carry us through for the next 150 years or whatever, is that mindset and keeping that mind open and just being like, okay, this person might not look like me, but they're still going to support me because we're firefighters. And we're going to be in this together. And I defy you to find, I'm sure all of my partners and everything would say, like, yeah, it might not look pretty, but like, she didn't leave me. She was right there working with me until, she never quit, never did, And so I think if you miss out on people like that, if you only have like kind of a narrow focus. But with that said, I think that narrow focus is going away. I mean, and I can't emphasize, if I say anything, that's
what do you mean by that? What narrow focus is going away? What do you mean? I just want to clarify.
Okay, so when I came on, it was like there was and I almost hesitate to say this because I feel like this is what people will like focus on, which is this negative thing. So let me just say, this is in the past, and most of the people that I'm like about to say that like they did these things, most of them are retired, and I don't even away. So,
when you came in, if I could just ask a kind of a pointed question, but
okay.
When you came in, were you worried? Was there trepidation about I'm black and I'm a female and I'm coming into the fire academy? Coming into the fire service. Was that something that you battled, or were you like, it doesn't matter because that's what I'm curious about.
So I knew, because I knew black, right? And so I know, and the two black females that came before me, took me out to lunch before, and they were like, hey, like, the culture of the fire department is different. And they weren't saying like, oh, they're going to pick on you. They were just like, look, culturally, the fire department is different. You're not going to get it. And, I also told them I was in the military for like a really short time. And so I was like, well, I was in the military. This stuff, like, whatever.
Right.
I could get yelled at, and it wasn't that. And so it's like, it's very unique to the fire service, which we kind of don't realize, how unique our little world is.
Sure.
And so when I did come in, once again, the lab did. But there was some stuff, some pushbacks, and things said, like people doing things that, it's not right. And you want to know the funny thing? So here's the thing. Here's what. So basically, people who have a problem with people who are different from them, and then go the extra mile to bully or haze or anything like that. Basically, they're bullies, right? And then it's up to those strong personalities to then step in, which is a really hard thing to do publicly, right? Like, because it's like kind of like high school situation, like you see the bullies picking on somebody, and you're like, I don't want to. I know that's wrong, but I don't want to get what they're giving over there. I just want to just be quiet and just go on there. And so it's up to those other people. And like I said, I was lucky enough to have really strong mentors come in
It's awesome. It's awesome.
take care of those people. I didn't take care of
Yes.
all the problems. I still had to do things for myself. They didn't come in and like get rid of them, but
rightfully so. You still have to deal with what you're dealing with,
yeah,
and if they can ease the bullying, they can ease it. They can ease the comments, the pranks, the
right,
the ill gestures that were occurring to you.
right,
Then now you become what you wanted to be, is just like everybody else, to
yeah,
have the initial nerves of the fire academy and
right,
focus solely on just being there and dealing with every single white guy in that academy was dealing with half of what you were dealing with, because all they dealt with was the nerves of learning and performing and doing their job. You had all these other layers, but for that to go away now allows you to take a breath
yeah,
and be a part of the process in which all those other guys were being allowed to do.
yeah, and part of that, and I always make sure to say this, because I don't like to kind of like really like consistently just blame outward. Part of that
No, I get it.
is self-imposed, right? Like part of it is when you're a woman and you start to screw something up, like because they don't allow you to see the other people also screw up. So like you're in your mind, you're like, I'm the only
Yes.
one screwing this up, and I'm screwing this up because I'm a woman. Oh, maybe they're right. Maybe all that. Oh my god, and all that shit's in your head, whether they're saying it or not. And then
Yep.
all it takes is one person to walk by and just be like, oh yeah, like you suck because you know what I mean? Like, and then you're like, oh, that confirms it. Oh, but then if somebody else comes in and is like, no, he screwed it up too.
Yeah, that
And
guy's so much worse than you.
you're like, what? Like, I was
Yeah.
all alone, and so so that with that, and then I did want to say that, like, yeah, that so just to kind of piggyback on what you said, oh hey, they're going to treat you like everybody else. So one of the number one guys that helped me, he retired as a deputy chief, but when I got hired, he was a captain. And during rookie school, if you were a paramedic, because you have to work on EMS during rookie school, on Fridays we would go out to stations and do station rides to get further acclimated. So I did a ride at his station, and he was pulling us in front of everybody, and he was like, look, a lot of people are going to be scared of you, because of, you're black and all that stuff and whatever. He's like, they're going to be acting weird around you because they just don't know. And he's like, not me. I'm going to treat you just like I treat every other rookie, like a piece of shit. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Right?
I love, and he like hands down is like, I mean,
Yeah.
he was probably my strongest mentor because of that. Because he was like, I'm not gonna be scared of you. I'm not gonna worry about every little thing I say
I love
because I'm not. He's like, because I'm not. He's like, I'm not a racist. I'm not sexist. He's like, He's like, I'm gonna treat you just like I treat everybody else. Because if I
Yeah.
treat you better, that's the same thing. That's me treating you differently because of who you are, and it's just as bad as if he were to be mean to me. Like he's like extra nice to me. That's the same thing.
Yeah, it's special treatment too, right?
That's the same thing, and that's not
That's
doing
right.
me any good.
That's right.
That's not making me a better firefighter. And so that's the point. Like if you're bullying or hazing and it's not making that person a better firefighter, what are you doing? Like if you can convince me that bullying or hazing is making that person a better firefighter, then okay. But if you're doing something just because like it's an ego trip, that's not making that person a better firefighter. And what are you doing it for? Like you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah. There's a difference between, pranks and being an asshole.
Yeah, and I mean,
Mhm.
look, I love. Trust me, I'm the worst one. Like I love pranks and I love
Yeah. It's part of the process.
shit talk. And I mean, like there's and if I'm dishing out, I can take it. Like like there's not, but there's a line there. Right? Like people will
That's right.
push that, and I haven't. Let me just say, I haven't. And so now that I have time and experience on, and I have a little bit of rank, now it's my job to be in the firehouse. If I see bullying or whatever going on, it's my job to step in. And that's one of the things that like I do want to emphasize that he goes on with it's not just women and minorities that get tased. like somebody might get singled out for a whole other reason, and they could be a straight white male getting singled out.
That's right.
So, and that's not lost on me. And I have not always been perfect about stepping in when I should have stepped in and said something. I haven't always been perfect. So I'm not that
Yeah.
hard on people who might see something and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna go with. I get why it happens because I haven't always. I mean, one of my really good friends, probably one of the best firefighters on the fire department, when he first came on, he was at a station, and he was a rookie, and there were two guys at the station that were, I mean, making his life a living hell. And he's a strong, like, dude. Like, he's not like a sissy at all. Like, he would say that his hands would shake on the drive into the station. Like, he would feel sick to his stomach, and it was mostly because he couldn't say anything back, right? Like, he just had to like kind of take all of that. And I didn't have a bid station at that point, and so I was there for 5 shifts, and I kind of picked up on it, whatever. But I was like, it's not my station. I don't care, and I just was like, whatever. These two idiots, and I just, we kind of did my own thing. Fast forward a year, I do have a bid in station. He is then now roving. He comes into the station for cycle, and he's talking about this, and he's saying that our station, our new station, is the first time on the fire department that he got treated like a human being. And I'm just like, shit. And he was like, yeah, you were at the station when they were doing all that stuff, and I was like, I could sit here and say, oh, I didn't see anything. I don't know. No, I saw it. I just didn't do anything about it when I could have because I was senior to them and I could have put a stop to it, and I didn't. And so it's on all of us to realize that and be as vigilant as you can. Try to step in, and look, we're not always going to be perfect, but try to step in, no matter who it is.
I love
And
this.
the irony is not lost on me that it was going to be the black female stepping in for the one.
I love it because what are they going to say to you?
Exactly, because
right?
I'm senior to them and I have rank on them, so it was
that's right. And you look different.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the F, guys?
Yeah.
What if it was me? You're gonna right? Oh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. It's like, and listen, I was there. Years and years ago, I was the big kid on the school bus. I was a bully.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it.
I really was.
Yeah.
I talk about it in my program,
Yeah.
right? That this kid punched me in the face, and I didn't even realize till 20 years later that it changed me.
Yeah.
And so it's important. And now with what I do, man, I find myself picking people up all the time. I walked the training grounds this past weekend, the weekend before. Every time I go out and do stuff, I don't care who you are. I put my hand out. I said, we catch eyes. I'll put my hand out. I'll say, hey, man, I'm Jeremy. And I'm whatever. I'm like, how's it? Just a little small talk. Walk with your head up. Engage people.
Yeah.
Look at people for who they are, because I promise you this, everybody's got struggles at home.
Yeah.
Everybody's got something somewhere.
Yeah.
Everybody's got something somewhere, and I promise you that anybody that's laying it on too heavy, they got more than the guys that they're hitting.
100%.
And, yeah,
100%.
and I will say this too, Jennifer. I just want to cruise back just for half a second too. I look at my kids today. My youngest is 16, and then I have a 17-year-old, and then I have two older kids too that are already grown out of college. And my 16, 17-year-old are sophomore, juniors in high school. Their friend group is more diverse than mine ever was.
Right.
Like the schools, when I went to, my high school, I mean, we had a few Asian kids, some black kids, some Indian, like we had different ethnicities, races, different people that looked different than me.
Right.
But it was a very small group. Now my friends or my daughter's friends,
yeah,
I'm blown away by how diverse the high school has become.
Yeah.
And I love it because my wife and I talk about this, especially after I started my Bridging the Gap program and I really dove in on a lot of this, on these topics. I'm so grateful that my kids are exposed to all these different people.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful because they have an absolute different appreciation than I did growing up.
Yeah.
I had to learn it. They live it.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's important. So these generations that are coming into the firehouse, they inherently have more of an education and background with diversity.
Yep.
And in fact, they don't even see differences in people.
Yeah, or they do, and they like more celebrate it, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
In the last 10 or 15 years, it's a different fire department right now. Like when I tell people the shit that like went down when I first started, like when I would come into we would go to class, and I would come to the classroom, and I would sit down on one side of the classroom, and everyone would get up and go to the other side and sit down on the other side of the classroom.
Wow.
Like stuff like that. So like when I say that now to people coming on now that have, I don't know, 10 or 12 years on that missed all that, they think I'm lucky.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way that's true because of the way I get treated now. It's like night and day. Like it is like night and day. And I'm telling you, that is the most positive thing I can say. And I hope that that's what people hear from this, is that we are definitely moving in the right direction. And it is not what social media will convince you of. Oh, like this demographic over here really hates this one and they don't want them. And it couldn't be further from the truth now. We are moving in the right direction. And so the only thing like that would put a stop to that is when people say something and then they go, oh, well, you can't say that, because it shuts down the conversation. Right? Like it shuts down the second you say that. Oh, you can't say that. Well, why? Like, why is that? Why is that offensive to that person? Why is that, And so it's like we're moving in a direction, and the thing that stops, people from grouping up together with different kinds of people is that kind of speech. Because if I'm around somebody that's different from me and I'm worried about, if I say something, well, somebody said I can't say that, but I don't know why. But now and so like our generation, we're just like, okay, let's just push away.
Yeah.
So it's up to people to answer that question and be like, well, I don't know if you can say that, but when you say that, this is what it means, and here's why. And I think maybe saying that instead of saying, how many times do you hear that nowadays? Somebody says something, you can't say that. Okay, then it just stops everything. The second
you are backing up something that you said very early on that I wrote down and quoted you. Education leads to diversity.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I hope people hear that point. And I hope people, that's ultimately like why I like going on podcasts, is because I think the impression that people get is, oh, women and minorities aren't accepted in the fire service. And that's not true. I think that times are changing and you have to pave your own way no matter what. And I think there is space for all of us. And I think that the fire service changed my life for the better. And
awesome.
I wouldn't want to make any other decision. And I've made lifetime friends that I never would have made. And guess what? None of them look like me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this. You made another friend today, and I'm glad that we did this. I'm serious. I really enjoyed this. This was an awesome conversation, and it's a conversation that I haven't had on the show before.
Oh, good.
Which is really why I wanted to do this today with you, because I think it's super important, right? Like, the idea of what this show is about is just talking about the fire service.
Yeah.
And the fire service, as narrow as you said before it is, and I would agree with you, it's still very wide open. There's so much here.
Yeah.
And this is one conversation that I'm honored to be a part of, because the way you formed it, the way you talked about it today, it was just a really an eye-opening conversation for me, and I loved it. It validated a lot of what my feelings have been and thoughts, and to hear it from you today has just been awesome. And so thank you. Thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and thanks for, helping me, get that message out, because I really do believe that, if we just keep kind of moving in this direction, being positive and being seen, I think it'll just make the fire service a lot better.
How about just fall in love with the fire service and trust the process?
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but I promise you, if you're willing to give into the fire service,
yeah,
it will pay you back 10 times over.
Yeah, and it's a great career. You get to break shit and people love you. They're like, oh my God, you poured water over everything, broke a hole in my wall, thank you. It's the greatest stuff,
It is. It is. Jennifer Osborne, thank you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah,
I truly appreciate this. And Yeah, I can't wait to meet you one day. I'd love
Yeah.
to. If you ever find your way back to New Jersey, I mean, I don't know how often you get back this way, but if you ever do, let me know. And if I get out your way, I'd love to touch base. It'd be a lot of fun.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the show. Stay right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to sign off the show, and I'll come right back to you, okay?
Okay.
Cool. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio podcast. Like I always say at the end of each show, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.